I sincerely thank the chairman of NAPA and the organizing committee for inviting me to this conference. It is a privilege to share this time and day with you. An audience of distinguished scholars and administrators can be very intimidating. Thanks to COVID-19, I'm giving this speech remotely. If I get very shy, I'll turn off my video camera, and we can always blame that on technology and network. Let me start with a disclaimer. The chairman of NAPA, Professor Ibezim, was my lecturer. He supervised my first degree project. We've maintained a close relationship since leaving UNN a quarter of a century ago. I reasonably suspect that he showed some bias in inviting me to this conference. If you find anything right with our interaction today, credit that to him. He is unquestionably a great teacher. For the things that are not as right, blame them on me. I probably didn't listen well in class. I'll be speaking on academia-industry collaboration, a catalyst for robust research output. I'll do everything not to follow the traditional paper presentation format. As scholars, you're already used to that. There is no point taking coal to Enugu or bringing up Batunsuka. I love Opa, by the way. Permit me to start with a tale of two games. Both are popular and enjoyed by millions of people around the world. And both are played with balls. One targets a hole, the other targets a goal. One is played by the rich, like my friend Professor Fokansi, and those pretending to be rich like me. The other is open to anyone. One is played in a specific pitch. The other can be played anywhere. One requires expensive gadgets and clubs. The other requires only balls. One is played mainly on sunny and humid days like today. The other can be played anytime. One is individual sports, celebrating the skills of one. The other is team sports, celebrating strategy and its execution by a team. One originated from Scotland. The other was made in China. One is golf. The other is football. Let us pretend for a minute that the academia is golf and the industry is football. That pretense allows us to accept both as games and opens our minds to their structural differences in foundation, focus, and incentive. The academia in its most basic form is an interesting study in individualism. It emphasizes independence and self-reliance. From the time we first learned the alphabet, we became aware it was not enough to learn half of it, while the next child in class learns the rest. You know all, or you fail all. If I'm good in mathematics, and she is good in English, it's not acceptable for me to write the mathematics test for her while she writes the English test for me. That will not qualify for best practice. It will be called malpractice. To my mathematics, I must add English. To her English, she must add mathematics. My training as a student emphasized and rewarded sitting on my desk, copying my notes, reading my books, passing my exams. It was all about me. Me, my, mine were common words. Our and ours were sparingly used when individual glory cannot be safely assigned. Our classroom is dirty. Our teacher is late. So early in life, we learn to appropriate to self that which we define as good and live for all that which we view as unpleasant. There was this humorous story of a young man who came home distressed. And the caring wife probed, "Sweetheart, tell me what it is. Don't call it your problem. We are together, call it our problem." And the man, the silly man, took the bet and said to the wife, "Our secretary in the office is pregnant for us." I understand the man is still at the mortuary. He may be buried now, COVID restrictions are lifted. Schools invented social distancing centuries before COVID-19. I remember those days that Professor Courier would come into the examination hall and ensure seats are 2 meters apart. "Thou shalt not look at the papers of thy neighbor." The industry, by contrast, has its foundation steeped in collaboration. Ordinary people come together and achieve extraordinary results, not by knowing all, but by bringing all. You learn early enough that you are as strong as your team and your team is as weak as you are. To make a tablet of paracetamol, I probably need actives, excipients, and packaging materials from 10 different manufacturers. From the factory to the market, I interface with Madam DG, Mr. Registrar, bankers and buyers, police and touts. To survive, I must cooperate. In our local parlance, I must behave. Beyond the foundational differences between the industry and academia, there is also the difference in focus. One pursues knowledge, often without tangible benefits. The other pursues benefits, often without corresponding knowledge. There is nothing wrong with knowledge, but knowledge for the sake of knowledge is incomplete and serves no good. There is nothing wrong with pursuing benefits, but doing so with knowledge makes it more enduring. Closely related to the difference in focus is the divergence in incentive. The scholar's motivation is promotion. Every soldier wants to be a general. Every teacher wants to be a professor. He is promoted for knowing, not for doing. He gets along by the quality of questions he asks, not by the relevance of the answers he provides. Every upstart wants to contend. Every contender wants to dominate. Climbing is by solving problems, not by flaunting knowledge. A patient will pay more for healing than he would pay for a physiology class. The market rewards the solution bank more than it will ever reward the knowledge bank. These differences, structural differences in foundation, in focus, and in incentive between the industry and the academia provide reasons for collaboration and not justification for dissociation. No successful ecosystem consists of one individual. Our similarities are good, But similarity is not an advantage in a game where diversity is required. Our survival as a species will rest more on our diversity than it will ever rest on our similarities. Collaboration is coming together, working together to produce something of common interest. Convergence Lab calls it shared creation. People with diverse skill sets, mindsets, value sets come together to produce something new, something of a higher quality than they would have produced independently. In a 2017 article in his blog, CTSI argued that collaboration is not just a strategy, it is the key to long-term business success. When properly executed, collaboration aligns visions and voices, passions and competences, talents and thoughts of a diverse community to create the trust and teamwork necessary for sustained superior performance. Collaboration is not an innate human trait. We picked it up at some point along our evolutionary journey. Up until 1869, when the first synthetic drug, chloral hydrate, a sedative hypnotic, was made, pharmacy was largely a solitary practice. Every practitioner was a repository of generalized knowledge. A patient walks in, and the apothecary hands over what he has in his backpack. The backpack was limited in storage, but the illnesses he treated were unlimited. One drug cured gonorrhea and toothache and everything in between. We have since moved from that era of knowing all things about all things to knowing few things about many subjects to now knowing many things about one subject. That is specialization, the thinning out of generalized knowledge. Specialization further underscores the need for collaboration. I see three major areas of collaboration between the industry and the academia. 1, education. 2, research and development. And 3, knowledge sharing. We take them one after the other. Education. The way we live, work, and relate with each other is changing at rates that are alarming and unprecedented. The way we prepare the workforce for tomorrow must change also. The evolution of skill sets closely followed the stages of industrial revolution. Back to the time when man lived in caves and ate only the beasts that he killed and the fruits that he plucked. Emphasis was on physical strength, the size of his muscles, the speed at which he runs, the number of persons in his household. The man became sophisticated. He invented machines, began to operate machines, and then automated machines, and had machines communicating with machines, and now to a point where we have man programmed and operated by machines. The skill set required for survival, sustenance, significance in each era are clearly different. When unmindful of this evolution, schools become adept at preparing students thoroughly for a world that no longer exists. It is sad to find out 2 years after graduation that most of what you learned in school is obsolete. It is tragic to discover that on your graduation day. Data and information are growing at exponential rates. It may interest you to note that 90% of all data in the world today was generated in the last 2 years. Yes, you heard right, 2 years. So learning must remain an active lifetime pursuit, not a transient short-term encounter. Otherwise, our best efforts at education will closely approximate sending young men and women into 21st century battlefields with bows and arrows. The top 10 skills required for global competitiveness, as compiled by World Economic Forum in Davos 2015, had complex problem solving, coordinating with others, and people management as the top 3 skills. Fast forward to 2020, 5 years later, only complex problem solving is still part of the top 3 skills. 2 other skills joined. And they are critical thinking and creativity. Emotional intelligence and cognitive flexibility made it to the top 10 list in 2020. They did not feature at all in 2015. Academia and industry must come together regularly to agree on the skills relevant in the marketplace. That fits into the conversation on curriculum, on methodology, on assessment. We must continually evaluate the relevance of the things we teach and the significance of the ones we skip. We must begin to ask ourselves, how do we bring entrepreneurship, creativity, imagination to science and technology? How do we add ethics and humanity to engineering and mathematics? It takes more than deep disciplinary knowledge to survive in today's marketplace. Education that is functional must begin to prioritize and reward the border-crossing competencies. That is the competencies that help you cross the borders of human interaction. And this will mostly be teamwork, communication, creativity, imagination, and emotional intelligence. Number 2, research and development. Critical changes are required here, not just in infrastructure and capital, but more importantly, in mindsets. We must stop looking at R&D as what the scientist does in the laboratory. It will help to start seeing it as part of the innovation ecosystem. And we all know what happens in an ecosystem. The organisms support each other for the survival of the organisms, the community, and the operating environment. In a successful ecosystem, strength is not measured by how smart, how intelligent, how independent each organism is, but by how interdependent, interconnected they all are. Research must not start in the laboratory. Ideally, it should start in the community where need is uncovered. Research should not end in the laboratory. It should end in the marketplace where value is exchanged. And the inhabitants of the innovation ecosystem are not all scholars and professors like you. They rightly include governments and corporations, entrepreneurs, investors, accelerators, consumers, media, public. Emphasis on research output, as captured in our topic today, must begin to give way to emphasis on research impact. There are millions of beautifully written theses, well polished and shelved in libraries of universities around the world. How many of these have practical relevance? One possible reason for this defect is that research often starts with what the scientist thinks is the problem and not what the intended user of the research outcome sees as a solution. Collaboration is not the end game of commercializing what has already been invented. It's not even the mid game of funding laboratory investigation. It is the start game of sitting together, painstakingly identifying the intended outcome, designing an approach that will deliver that, and working to remove all obstacles on the road to success. There is this brilliant work by a group at University of Liverpool Management School. And they submitted that research that is relevant must answer to the 6 elements of impact. 1, influential. That's the capacity to change what is. Memorable, lasting experience. Practical, ability to resolve today's problem for man and society. Applicable in society, in institutions, deployable for real-time situations. And then collaborative, drawing on the energy, on the strength, on capacity, on enthusiasm of a diverse group. And finally, transformational, and that is creating new answers, new questions, and new possibilities. Number 3, knowledge sharing. The industry and the academia must come together to transform the rich expanse of knowledge we have today in our laboratories, in our shelves, in our journals, to a wealth, a common pool of information source that laymen and women can access and find the motivation to lead happy, prosperous lives. One school that has done this very well is Harvard. Harvard Business Publication described its journal, Harvard Business Review, as the leading destination for smart management thinking. The aim of the journal is to provide professionals across the world with the rigorous insight and best practices they need to lead themselves and the organizations more effectively and make positive impact. Last year, 2019, Harvard reported a revenue of $262 million from publications alone. Now, to put that in context, that's over 100 billion naira and 2 times our 2020 budget, capital expenditure budget for the entire Ministry of Education. Now, if you would like to know, the budget for the Ministry of Education, the capital budget, is for 28 parastatals under the Ministry of Education, 37 federal universities, 25 federal polytechnics, 21 federal colleges of education, and 104 federal unity schools. These are all the people that are going to share 100 billion. That is less than half of what Harvard makes from publication alone. But the danger is not even how small it is. The bigger danger is that by the time he leaves Abuja, the part that is left after embezzlement, and the part that we are going to embezzle at a local and school level, then what will one university invest in capital budget? I'm sure many of you must have heard of Health Bits. That's a publication by the Harvard Medical School. and it's the go-to place for medical information on a wide variety of subjects, from sports to insomnia, obesity, marijuana, aging, whatever. I'm convinced there is no more knowledge that we need today. It is a framework for transforming what we already know to a readily accessible value. I will briefly discuss the framework for collaboration. Collaboration rests on three things: communication, cooperation, and coordination. For shared creation to be possible, vision must be clearly communicated. And not just communicating the vision, the expectations of the collaborating parties must be identified, respected, agreed upon, and pursued. The World Economic Forum identified the expectations of the academia to include funding, infrastructure, equal partnership, placements, and feasible goals, while the expectation of the industry will include market-aligned courses, skilled manpower, solutions for concern, and operational approach. Knowing what each party wants is not enough. We must have the willingness to share information, skills, and resources in a way that builds trust, builds teamwork, and builds passion for the common goal. Knowledge and willingness are not enough. We must add to this a coordinated process to manage our resources and expectations, our efforts and results, in a way that ensures that the desired goal is not only reached, but reached in a most effective manner. I will make 3 recommendations on how we can promote academia-industry collaboration, and then I close. Number 1, I think we should seriously consider setting up a research translation desk that brings together at regular intervals the research community, entrepreneurs, investors, and policymakers. The aim of this is to uncover needs, set strategic goals, provide resources, and turn research findings into commercially viable goods and services. Secondly, I think we should start promoting more vigorously academia-industry linkages that will encourage researchers to have practice-level experience in the industry. This will deepen insight, perspective, understanding, and shift emphasis from more knowledge to profitable knowledge. So when next you are considering a sabbatical, think of coming to Evans Baroque. Don't go from one classroom to another classroom for your sabbatical. Thirdly, it is time for us to start putting incentives around the processes that convert knowledge to solution. And I'll tell you why this is important. Rewards define priority. Priority defines action. Action defines outcome. Knowing is good. Knowing is excellent. But doing, not knowing, is the ultimate proof of an illuminated mind. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is fast spent. In school, I dreaded long and boring lectures. And I had more than my fair share of it. I did not set out today to pay you back in your own coins. The Holy Book talks about or advises against repaying evil with evil, so I'm not about to do that. So I have to close ahead of the scheduled time. Our survival as a species, and in fact the survival of any enterprise or community, is deeply rooted in collaboration. Nothing significant, nothing remarkable is ever the accomplishment of one individual. We need each of us and all of us to build a happy, healthy, and prosperous world. Success is not a collection of parts. It is the comprehension of wholes. Coming together, believing together, working together, fighting together, falling and rising together builds the enthusiasm and resilience that are essential for success. All success is successful collaboration. All failure is failure to collaborate. I don't know what I should be saying. Thank you for listening. I don't even know whether you listened. Technology is an awful audience. God bless NAPA. God bless you all.